Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Welcome, everyone. This is Smart Health Talk Radio Show, and you're listening to KCAA 1050 AM. But not just 1050 AM, for those of you that have been longtime listeners, just FYI, we're on 106.5 FM and 102.3 FM as well. And you can probably hear us all the way out through Riverside, all the way out to Palm Springs, Ontario, on our FM broadcast, which is very exciting for us. And if you're listening to KCAA right now, I just really hope that you're going to be sticking around for our Smart Health Talk show. And I'm your host, Elaine McFadden. I'm a registered dietitian with a master's in public health. And I'm your personal dietitian today, but we are going to be talking about things related to public health. Especially, there's lots of stuff going on. And I'm very excited. I have an incredible guest here with me today, Steve Lowe. And for those of you that live in our inland empire, you may have heard that Nestle, you know, that makes all those junk food products, none of which I buy myself or would allow in my body, but they have been taking water from our San Bernardino mountains for decades. Decades, everybody. And so that Arrowhead Springs water that you're buying is actually the water is from our mountains, but it's being taken out by a Swiss foreign company. And they have been, like, just to give you an example, last year they took 36 million gallons and they paid a whole $524 for it. Do the math. Yeah, we're being ripped off big time. Not only are we being ripped off of spring water, and just to put something in perspective, when we look at the world water supply, spring water is less than 1%. It is rare, it is precious, it is filtered, and they are just pretty much, you know, taking all they want for $524. And we're going to get the story behind that, but not just the logistics of what has happened here, but the long-term wide effects of what's happening. And Steve is an expert at this. He's going to tell us just what it means when a company comes and takes that much water out of our mountains, especially during times when we have a drought. And yeah, we had some rain this year, but we're not out of the woods yet, and not even close. And so we really need to understand the big picture of when we allow these kind of things, because right now the government is actually negotiating a new contract with them. And they are so arrogant. Their response to that contract was just kind of mind-blowing, really. They think they have the right to our water, pretty much, to take whatever they want, because they've been getting away with it for so long. And oh, that ranger that wrote that contract to begin with is now working for Nestle. So just to kind of have an idea of what's going on there. And then Steve and I are also going to be going through some really important issues that are going on in the news right now, and I'm really interested to hear his view on these subjects as well. So why don't we go ahead and get to know Steve a little bit, because I'm going to get to know him along with you guys, and he's actually right here in the studio with me. And go ahead, and I want to introduce Steve Lowe, and I want him to give us a little rundown on his history, because I think it's probably pretty interesting.
Yes, my name's Steve Lowe, and I'm a Forest Service biologist, retired now. I worked for the Forest Service for 40 years. About 30 of that was here on the San Bernardino National Forest. The Nestle's permit was first issued in 1929, which is years and years ago, before the Forest Service had biologists and people who understood hydrologists. So anyway, that permit was issued, and since that time Nestle has drilled about 10 wells. The wells that they've drilled, well, they include some tunnels. They also have tunnels, and those go into the mountain up to 500 feet deep. Those, Nestle's claim is that those are surface water that they have rights for, and so that's really being challenged now. That's one of the focuses of the public challenge, is their water right. But anyway, the Forest Service issued that permit in '29, and then it was renewed basically every 10 years or so and the last one that was issued was 1978. In 1988, that permit came up for renewal, and the Forest Service was busy, and nothing was done. 1998, nothing was done. About 2002 or so, the Forest Service said, wait a minute, we better do an analysis here and find out if we're taking too much water, not enough water. Well, at that time we had I don't know if you all remember, but we had a huge fire just outside San Bernardino, the old fire. We also, immediately after that, had one of the biggest floods ever in San Bernardino, killed 18 people at a church in Waterman Canyon.
Wow.
So it was a really, really tough year. And so the Forest Service kind of just dropped the Nestle analysis. And part of the reason was that, again, that we were so busy at that time. But at that time, we recognized how important it was to do that analysis. We knew Strawberry Creek, where all those wells are. We knew that it was an important creek. We weren't sure how important. But so we never got back to that thing. And then in about 2010 or 11, we had a big tunnel come through the National Forest. It's a huge 18-foot diameter Metropolitan Water District tunnel. It was called the Arrowhead Tunnel. It's part of the Inland Feeder Project, and it takes water from Silverwood Lake to Dominigoni or Diamond Valley Lake. And it's part of our storage here. But anyway, in the process of drilling that tunnel, we learned how important groundwater is to our surface water springs. Our streams in the summer here only run because of groundwater that's stored up in them during the rest of the year. And so we learned that all the animals that live in our streams in this San Bernardino front country, we have endangered species like leaf-spells vireo, yellow willow flycatcher. We have a southern rubber boa, which is a state threatened species. We have spotted owls and all of these species depend on water. And so during this drought, which was the worst drought that we've had in probably 500 plus years, Nestle continued to take all the water they could. We met with them 2 years ago and begged them to meet with the public and try to figure out how to take care of the water, how to take care of the stream and make sure that we didn't dry the stream up. And basically they just shined us on. They refused to meet with us, kept pumping water. And in 2015, even though we were still in the drought, they actually increased their take of water that year. At the same time that the residents in the mountains were being told they had to quit watering their lawns, they had to cut back 25% on their water, Nestle was increasing their take from the same groundwater that the mountaintop uses. So
I'm getting more upset by the minute, Steve. I mean, this is really upsetting. But go ahead and continue.
Okay.
I have a feeling it gets worse.
So when they refused to meet with us, and the Forest Service, I think, was afraid to meet with us because they're afraid of Nestle. Nestle is so powerful, they have more lawyers than the government, we hear. So the Forest Service is real afraid to do much. They're acting totally different than they've ever acted before on any project that I've been involved in for 40 years. So anyway, all the local conservation groups, Sierra Club, Audubon, the Save Our Forest Association, Tri-County Conservation League, the Endangered Habitats League, all of those groups band together and started writing letters to the forest supervisor, begging them to stop Nestle from taking water and to do an analysis of whether there is water available for Nestle. The way the National Forest works is they're only supposed to give water if it's in excess to National Forest needs. Well, in a 500-year drought, there was no water in excess of National Forest needs. And so they shouldn't have been taking any water. So anyway, those groups writing those letters, plus Astoria Stuff and Center for Biological Diversity and the Courage Campaign filed lawsuit against the Forest Service for continuing to allow Nestle to take water. The lawsuit, we lost the lawsuit. The judge said it's not Nestle's fault that the Forest Service hasn't taken any action for 29 years. So the Forest Service needs to continue with their plans to do an analysis and come up with a new permit. So now what the public is trying to do is to make sure that the state and the Forest Service both know that the public supports them standing up to Nestle. It's going to be real hard for the state to rule against Nestle and for the Forest Service to rule against Nestle. Nestle's threatened to sue both of them. And so it's going to be hard for them to do that, and all the public support that we can give them will help them stand up. It's public land. The National Forest or public land owned by every citizen in the United States owns that National Forest. And the water underneath that National Forest is owned by the state of California and the National Forest. So Nestle is taking our public water, and that's what people are standing up to fight.
And they really are taking it when you're doing the math at 36 million gallons for $524. That's stealing, in my opinion, and criminal. And we should actually be filing all kinds of lawsuits against them for the people for stealing our water. Because, I mean, how could you not know that? I mean, you're selling it for how much money? I'd like to know what the percentage of profit is on that, but I'm sure it's really big. And they have been... just a little background on Nestle, everyone. This is a model that they are using all over the world, and not just Nestle, but other big corporations. For some reason, they think that they have a right to take any water that they want, and this is what happens when we feed these corporations and create these giant, I call them monsters, really, because they start to abuse their power in a lot of ways. And we learned that clearly on the Prop 67 fight for GMO labeling, that these big corporations paid millions of dollars for advertising to defeat Prop 37 for the right for us to know what the heck's in our food. And then they duplicated that in Washington. Only this time they hid behind the Grocery Manufacturers Association with their money. These corporations donated all this money and said, oh, this is just the Grocery Manufacturers Association, when really it was all of these corporations. Well, they were convicted of a federal felony for what they did, and were had to pay, I think it was like $25 million or something, but the thing is, what we have to do is we have to accept the reality of what's really going on here. And I just want to thank you, Steve. You just did such an excellent job of explaining all of that. We have to start doing maybe a side-by-side, benefits and non-benefits of this situation, because what's at risk. The endangered species that you mentioned. The residents, the people that live there, do they not have any rights? Why are we giving some Swiss company our water for free and letting them put people out that live there without water? And not just that, but our streams and our ability to go and enjoy our lands, to go and have a little picnic, by the stream with your family. And just think about all the wildlife that depend and come and drink out of that river. It's not like they get to go turn on a faucet or go buy a bottle of Arrowhead water. They are dependent on that for life and even to be able to live. And we appreciate all these things, and when we see them, they bring us joy. And this company is taking all of that from us, and their arrogant attitude is something that's unforgivable to me. What they have done, they have stolen from our people, from anyone actually, because these just like Steve said, these parks belong to all of us. And what I like about this, Steve, is it's if there is something to like, and that is the lesson that we're learning here. Because I think it's an important lesson for all of us to learn, because we know that moves that are being made for the current administration to put our parks up for sale. And have you heard about that as well, the legislation that's been happening?
Yes, I've been watching that real close, and in fact, Congressman Cook even said that he was supportive of giving the National Forest to the state, because the National Forest obviously couldn't take care of this Nestle issue. And that the Forest Service should back off on Nestle and not give them any real pressure. And so Congressman Cook's right in there with everybody else who is against public land and especially national public land.
Well, explain that, because maybe people don't understand what all that means. Kind of take us through that step by step. Now, you say he's against national land and they want to give it back to the states. Like, what does that really mean?
Okay. A lot of the congressmen in the West, where there's so much federal land, national forests, national parks, Bureau of Land Management land, national wildlife refuges, some of those state congressmen and senators and the representatives want to take that land away from the federal government and sell it or give it away to the states, because they say the states is where the management should be, not at the federal government. You know, even Trump is very anti-federal government, basically. So all of those public lands are threatened right now. And so when this Nestle issue came up, Cook was asked by the Desert Sun, what do you think about this? And Cook said, well, they should back off, quit pressuring Nestle. This is an example of how the Forest Service can't manage their land, and so that needs to be given to state and local governments. And that was totally wrong, to stand up for Nestle against our public land. It's our public land, you know, so.
Well, okay, this is where we have like the action, the action phase that we have to start to take action. And you know, I know it's hard to think about because we all have so many pressures in our life. We have so much to do. But I'll tell you, if we don't start speaking up as a group, our power as a group, as people, this is what is going to protect our lands. And just give them a little bit of an idea, Steve, because from all that I did a bunch of research too, as far as like these mining companies. Like there's an Australian mining company that wants to come in and dig some giant copper mine over in
Arizona.
Yeah. And, you know, like if we allow that, give us an idea of what would be the outcome.
The copper mine?
Yeah, if we allow like this Australian company
Yeah.
to come in and take our copper out of our federal land, what happens to that land?
Well, have you ever seen copper mines? They're big giant pits, open pit mines. So it goes from natural habitat to open pit, basically. And they're almost impossible to restore because it's solid rock. And so you end up with a big giant pit there. And you end up with the roads that it took to access the mine, all the overburden that's generated by the mine. And the one in Arizona is is a real problem that I have a kind of a real concern for personally. I used to be the biologist there on the Coronado National Forest, and that's where this project is in the Coronado National Forest.
So you really know this area.
Santa Rita Mountains, and it's one of the last places in the United States where we still get jaguars periodically, and jaguars are unbelievably wonderful creatures, and so to me it's very important, and that's the kind of importance that those places have, is for species like jaguar that kids may never get to see in the United States, but now they have a chance still. And that brings up the border wall. That's another big giant issue. The border wall crosses all across all those animals' habitat. The Sonoran pronghorn antelope, they need to move back and forth. They need a lot of country to live in. The jaguars, they need a lot of country to live in. And so that border wall has a lot of issues that I'm really concerned with as a biologist and citizen.
Yeah, and that's something that I learned a lot about in urban sprawl. Because I lived in Colorado, and I know that they were building communities way out away from town, and they wanted to have houses out there because of the beauty that was out there, but their presence totally disrupted the migration pathway of different animals. So that because the houses were there, they couldn't even migrate in a way that they had been doing for probably hundreds of years.
Thousands and thousands of years.
Thousands and thousands of years, thank you.
Yeah.
And so we're not thinking big picture in so many different ways in this country. And I tell you, I hope that those of you that are listening are getting fired up. We've already talked is it Senator Cook or Congressman Cook?
Congressman Cook.
Congressman Cook has said that he's all for selling off our federal lands, your parks, allowing corporations to come in and dig giant holes, get rid of our wildlife, and then also the hazards of this wall that we're talking about. Oh yeah, build a wall, but what kind of impacts does that really have on all of the things that are wonderful about our country? Another issue that was brought up, Steve, I'd like to hear your opinion on, is if we built the wall along the Rio Grande, that if we build it on our side of the river, we're actually giving the river to Mexico. And if we tried to build it on the other side of the river,
we're taking their half of the river.
Yeah, and plus they're not going to pay for it. It's going to be we're going to have to buy their land. So are we willing to give up the Rio Grande River for a wall? I mean, come on, people. This is like crazy. So tell us more about because I want to understand. Oh, well, I wanted to first of all ask you, like when I did the research about these companies on how they're able to come onto federal land and frack, mine, because it's my understanding that we have like 1 million abandoned mines in this country. What happened with that one mine where all those that it was on Navajo land, was that right?
I believe so, and a tributary to the Colorado River, I think.
And so tell us what happened with that mine first.
From what I understand, they were doing some restoration work on some of the ponds that had been there for years and years, and they busted through the dike on one of the ponds, and all that bad stuff that had been settled there for all those years drained into the river.
Okay, well, when you say a pond, maybe some people are thinking about a beautiful pond with lily pads and fish swimming in it. Tell everyone what kind of pond this was.
These are ponds that come from the bad stuff that is leached out of the mines, and so it's a place where people can't even go in there. It's protected because it's so dangerous. So it was bad water that went into the river.
And won't this don't we already have, like in Montana, isn't there a giant hole there that it's so toxic, it's like acid, and they have, from what I understand, they have endangered cranes.
Oh, that are landing on the water.
Yeah, that come and land on that water, where this hole, where this mine used to be, and water collects in it, and it's super toxic. So these incredibly beautiful cranes that are endangered are migrating across this hole, and then they land in the water. Oh, that's something cranes do. And they're poisoned with acid water. And this is what we're going to end up with, a giant hole full of acid water. And not just that, but I don't even want to think about it, Steve, but let's paint a picture if we just put up our federal lands to the highest bidder. I mean, what is your worst nightmare about what could happen here?
Well, I've seen it happen, and the companies, if we don't watch them and we don't make sure they do the right thing, and the agency that does that the most for us as citizens is the EPA. That's their job, is keeping water safe and air safe. Well,
which is going to be gutted.
Yeah, and we're gutting that. Trump's budget guts those agencies, and so even today, the tendency is for those companies to come in and do all their stuff. Then when the resource is gone, then just leave it. And so, because of the EPA in places and the regulations that we have, we're a lot of times able to stop those companies, make them correct it before they leave, make them restore the area. But my biggest fear is with getting rid of all the regulations, cutting the EPA back, is we'll have all kinds of big companies just running in, taking the resource and leaving this abandoned land that's not worth a thing anymore. So go ahead and give us some last words. We have just about a minute and a half, but go ahead, Steve, and tell people where they should go for more help or information if they want to get involved, because you guys went out and protested along the street. You're trying to raise awareness. How can we get people organized and get them involved? Well, the best thing right now is to keep watching the newspapers and stuff to see what the next event that happens is. Once the state board makes a decision on the water, the Forest Service will start their Environmental Policy Act process, and that's when people need to get involved. So you can get on the San Bernardino National Forest website and keep watching that and look under the projects. And this project is called Nestle Bottled Water Extraction Permit. So.
Okay, and call your legislators, right? And
Yeah,
tell them what you think. And feel free to email me anytime, Elaine@smarthealthtalk.com. We're here for you. We want to protect you. And please go visit our Blue Monarch Facebook page and our website and join our Milkweed Planting Club, everyone. I'll send you some free milkweed seeds and get you started. And thanks so much for tuning in to Smart Health Talk. I'm your host, Elaine McFadden, and I am so happy to be here for you and talking to you today. And I hope you'll join us again next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Thanks again, and stay tuned. We've got lots more for you.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.